Picture this. You're lying in bed. Morning light slips through the curtains, soft and slow. You stretch, blink the sleep out of your eyes, and feel something off. You look at your hands, only they're not hands. They're foreign. Your body, it doesn't feel like yours anymore. Something's changed. You're not you. That unsettling scene, it's exactly how The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka begins. But the real horror, it's not the transformation into a giant bug. It's what that transformation reveals about the world we live in, especially for men. Gregor Samsa wakes up as something grotesque, not a monster, not a villain, just useless. A bug, no longer able to do the one thing that made him valuable, work. And in that single shift, Kafka rips away everything that gave Gregor worth in the eyes of his family and society. But here's what most people miss. The family doesn't turn away from Gregor because he's a bug. They turn away because he can no longer provide. The man who carried them, sacrificed for them, bent himself backward just to see them live comfortably, becomes worthless the moment he can't keep doing it. Before this nightmare began, Gregor was the household's backbone. He worked a job he hated every single day to pay off his family's debts. He dreamed of a better future for his sister, saving money to send her to music school. Every part of his existence revolved around making life easier for the people he loved. And they loved him for it, or so it seemed. But when Gregor loses his ability to provide, everything changes. His mother, she faints at the very sight of him. His father, he hurls apples at him, one so hard it embeds in Gregor's back and slowly kills him. His sister, Greta, the one he adored most, starts off helping him. But over time, even that help turns into bitterness, resentment, and then hatred. Eventually, she says it, we have to get rid of it. Not him. It. This isn't a horror story about a man turning into a bug. This is a brutal reflection of what happens when a man, once strong, once needed, can no longer serve. It's a story that forces us to ask, what happens when a man who gave everything has nothing left to give? Because in the world Kafka shows us, and in the one many men live in today, love isn't unconditional. It's tied to utility. It's tied to function. You are loved as long as you produce. The moment you stop, that love disappears. Let me bring this closer to home. Think about that guy who wakes up before sunrise. He skips meals, works overtime, sacrifices his weekends, all to keep the lights on, to keep the family fed, to keep everyone else's dreams alive. Maybe it's your dad, maybe it's you. He keeps saying, just a little longer. Once I get that promotion, once the debt's gone, once the kids are older. But the finish line keeps moving. The appreciation, it's there. But only when the money is, only when the role is filled, only when the man keeps showing up, never slipping, never asking for help, never breaking down. But what happens when he does? What happens when that man gets sick? When he loses his job? When the pressure cracks him open? When he's no longer the provider? When he becomes like Gregor? Here's the cold, quiet truth that keeps many men awake at night, staring at ceilings in the dark. We're all one disaster away from being discarded, not literally turned into insects, but metaphorically. Once we lose our value as producers, we risk becoming invisible, or worse, seen as burdens. Men who ask for help are often seen as weak. Men who show vulnerability are seen as broken. And that's the deepest horror of all. Because when Gregor transforms, the real change isn't just in him. It's in how everyone else responds. And for many men, that's the real fear. Not the fall itself, but the silence and abandonment that follow it. Now, let's look deeper into what happens to Gregor's family after his transformation, because this is where Kafka's knife cuts the deepest. Before Gregor turns into a bug, his family is completely dependent on him. His father's too old to work, his mother's too fragile, his sister is too young and unskilled, so Gregor carries the load for all of them. But the moment he's out of commission, guess what? Suddenly, everyone finds a way. His father gets a job. His mother starts sewing. His sister becomes confident and independent. They were always capable. They just never had to be, because Gregor was doing it all. This reveals something chilling about how society and even families can treat men. It's not about who you are, it's about what you do, what you can offer. Men are often seen not as individuals with emotions and dreams, but as tools, as resources. Human ATMs, workhorses, walking, talking providers. And what makes this so tragic is that most men don't fight this role, they embrace it, because that's what they've been taught their whole lives. Your value is your sacrifice. And here's what hits hardest. Gregor never complains, not once. Even after becoming a bug, trapped in his room, neglected, abused, he still worries about the bills, still stresses about how his family will survive without him. Even in his final days, when he's broken and alone, he doesn't lash out. He blames himself. He internalizes the guilt, the shame, the rejection. He accepts the suffering. Sound familiar? How many men do you know like that? Men who smile through the pain, who say, "I'm fine," even when they're breaking inside, who work themselves into an early grave, not because they want to, but because they feel they have to. Men who believe that asking for help makes them weak, that if they can't be strong, then they're not worth loving at all. The real transformation in Kafka's story isn't Gregor becoming a bug. It's his family revealing who they've been all along. The father who could have worked, the mother who wasn't too fragile, the sister who could have stood on her own. They all chose to depend on Gregor because it was easier. And once he couldn't carry them anymore, they didn't mourn. They moved on. They flourished. That's psychological betrayal. They could have shared the load. They could have lifted him up. But instead, they stepped over him. Now, let's talk about the men we see every day, modern-day Gregors. The father working 3 jobs to pay for his kids' future while missing their childhood in the process. The husband who stays in a loveless marriage because he believes his only worth is tied to the money he brings home. The son who gives up his dreams to care for aging parents who never once asked about his own aspirations. They're all one step away from disappearing, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. They all carry that quiet fear. If I stop producing, they'll stop caring. Here's a haunting question. When was the last time someone loved you just for being? Not for what you provide, not for what you fix, not for what you achieve, just for you. Most men can't answer that, because most men have never felt it. And now we arrive at the most painful part of all, Gregor's room. It becomes his prison. But not just because he's a bug. Even before the transformation, Gregor was already isolated. He had no real friends, no personal life, no joy, just endless travel for work, day in, day out, all to serve his family. The bug didn't isolate him. It revealed his isolation. The shell of a life he'd been living finally took form. Now, ask yourself, how many men live in that same invisible prison? They go to work, come home, provide, repeat. They sit at dinner tables where no one asks how they feel. They sleep next to partners who respect what they do, but have no idea who they are. Their dreams, forgotten. Their needs, pushed aside. Their identity, reduced to a paycheck. They're already living in Gregor's room. They just haven't realized it yet. Let's not forget the apple. When Gregor's father throws it at him and it lodges in his back, it doesn't kill him instantly. It kills him slowly, quietly. That apple is more than fruit. It's every demand placed on a man's shoulders, every expectation. Every time he was told to man up instead of being allowed to break down. Every time his emotions were ignored because men don't cry. Every time he was reduced to a number, a salary, a status. That's how men die, not with a scream, but in silence. And then there's Greta, Gregor's sister. She's the one he sacrificed everything for. And yet she's the first to call him a burden, the first to say, we have to get rid of it, not him. It. That's the final betrayal. The person he loved most, the one he wanted to lift up, and she's the one who throws him away first. And that betrayal? It happens every day. The children who forget the father who worked himself sick, the wife who walks away when the money runs out, the family who stops calling when the man is no longer useful. The worst part? When Gregor dies, they don't cry, they celebrate. They go on a family outing. Their new life begins without him, as if he never mattered. Because to them, he didn't. Not as a person, only as a provider. And this is the ugly truth Kafka leaves us with. Gregor's family never loved him. They loved what he did. Once they learned to do it themselves, he was nothing to them. So, now I ask you, who would still be in your life if you stopped providing? If you were sick, jobless, struggling, would your partner stay? Would your friends check in? Would your family rally around you? Or would they look away? These aren't questions you answer easily. They're the kind that hit you in your chest and don't leave, but they matter. Because there's a difference between love and a transaction, and most men, sadly, never get to experience the first. They only live the second. Let's be clear, wanting to provide for the people you love is beautiful. It's noble. But the problem starts when that becomes your only value. When you're only loved as long as you keep delivering. That's not love. That's a contract with fine print you didn't get to read. Gregor's story doesn't warn us against providing. It warns us against tying our entire identity to it. Because real love, the kind that sees you, stays with you, lifts you when you're down, that kind of love is rare, and it starts with believing you deserve it. So, look around your life. Who asks about your dreams? Who would hold you up if you couldn't stand on your own? If the list is short, it's not too late to change it. Stop living in Gregor's room. Start living in your truth. You are more than what you give. You are more than what you earn. And yes, you are worthy of love that doesn't come with strings. If this spoke to you, share it. Someone else needs to hear it too. And drop your thoughts in the comments. Because your story, your voice, it might be the one thing that makes someone else realize they're not alone. Subscribe for more truth that hits deeper than what society dares to say. And remember, you're not just a provider, you're a person, a soul, and that alone is enough.